Hi, everyone. You have tuned in to the Python Pulse live stream, which is every second Friday of the month. This is at this time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 7 p.m. UTC. I am your host, Dawn Wages, and I am joined with my excellent friend and colleague, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, everybody.
And you're in Seattle, right?
That's right.
Okay, so we have like switched conditions because it is smoky and wildfirey over here in Philadelphia. And I got some really good tips on like masks and what is like the AQI I should not be walking my dog in. Yeah, I feel it. How are you doing over there?
It's raining today, so as is tradition. So I'll take that over the wildfires. But yeah, I feel ya.
Well, thanks for joining. I'm so excited. I'm always very excited to stream with you. I'm the Python community advocate for those who are tuning in. And Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, kind of focusing on the scientific Python kind of area. I have a PhD in quantum computing stuff, and that's kind of how I got into Python, which was actually to automate and use lab equipment that was kind of broken and or needed Windows 95 or Windows XP to run. So turns out it's easier to just write your own serial controllers in Python.
Wow. I don't think I got that extra layer. That is insane. Cool. So we're thrilled to bring you another episode of the Python Pulse this month. We're going to be going into dev containers. So we've had a previous one or two streams about dev containers. One was with Pamela Fox back in January, and that one's a great episode. So if you're down for dev containers, go check that out. It was really, really great. We'll be starting from kind of zero here. So if you're not familiar with dev containers, you can stay here. You're still in the right place. But we're going to do some type of like speed run. I'm not even familiar with speed runs as a concept. You are the streamer, Sarah. Tell me about this speed run. I'm so hyped. And when you told me about it, I was like, oh yeah, the audience is going to kill for this. What's up?
Well, I enjoy watching video game speedruns, which is basically you can, either as fast as you can get to the end of the game, or maybe as fast as you can get all the achievements. So this is, we're going to do dev container speedruns, which is, okay, maybe hopefully not timing, or maybe timing where I can't see it. But we're going to take some repos that don't have dev containers and see how quick it is to add them. So yeah, that's the plan. We've got some fun ones, basically just to show you how easy it is to do. And I will say probably adding documentation, which definitely should go with this, is out of scope for the speed run. So I'm not going to write documentation at speed.
That would be really impressive. I know one or two devs who could probably do it, but they are documentation, queens and kings and royalty over there. So I don't, yeah, but I appreciate that. So I see a bunch of people joining. I'm also seeing people talk about their different levels of experience with dev containers. Thank you. Thank you. This is an interactive show. So I think this is going to be really fun. And also tell us where you're from and put some snakes in the chat. I love putting snakes in the chat. I just think that's just great. So snakes in the chat. So we introduce ourselves. This is my agenda. Oh, okay. And so now we have announcements before we get to the fun stuff. So we'll try to zoom through these quickly. So we have the Polyglot Notebooks, and VS Code now supports Python and R. With this release, you can use Python and R along with other previously available languages such as C#, SQL, and KQL. With the addition of Python and R environments, data access, cleaning, and modeling are easier than ever before. You can check all of these things if you want to follow up more. They're all in the community notes, which are in the description of the stream. We had a full day live stream with Pamela Fox, which had tons of great content, including but not limited to building, testing, deploying Fast API, Django, cloud databases, and containerizing your application. It was on May 2nd. It was so fun. And the on demand content is available on the Microsoft Developers channel. Check that out. We had our annual VS Code Day event in April. It was all day and tons of great content. It wasn't technically like a Python for VS Code, but Python showed up in full force. It was really great. We also had Pamela Fox on there as well. And if you were not able to tune in virtually to learn about data science, accessibility, dev containers, GitHub integration, and all sorts of things around becoming a VS Code power user, all the content is split up and available on demand on the VS Code channel on YouTube. So we also have Python templates for VS Code extensions, which helps Pythonistas further customize their environments. We're going to have we have an example VS Code profile for this stream. We're starting a new thing where I'm going to have Sarah create a profile, and you're going to see this drop down where Python is now included as this optimum starting point for customizing your VS Code settings. So we're trying to take all of the guesswork out of it, and then you can tweak and tune to your heart's desire. We also have App Service that now supports Python 3.11. That is the newest and fastest Python version yet. It was released last October, and Microsoft contributed heavily to the first step in a multi-year plan to make Python more performant. So we have a team and a long-term strategy for contributing to this mission. Don't forget to check out the AZD templates, one of the best ways to deploy your Python code. It uses the Azure Developer CLI. You essentially pull down an existing template, change out some code, keep or tweak what you need in the deploy artifacts, and you're handed keys to the castle. You get to deploy with maybe monitoring or container apps or VNets and more. And so in preparation for Build, which happened, this is a tiny little conference that Microsoft has every year. We also added 2 new repos. It is for OpenAI plugin with Fast API and a ChatGPT quick start. So check out the AZD templates for that. AZD is now 1.0. The Azure Developer CLI is an open source command line tool that accelerates the time it takes for you to take your application from local development environment to the cloud. So the CLI combines high-level application developer-friendly commands. You can think init up pipeline config kind of thing with extensible declarative blueprint templates to keep everything really simple and easy to use. That's the goal. I guess that's the theme of today. We're trying to make you develop faster. We're trying to help you out with all of your Python programming needs. Azure Container Apps now has awesome release. It was a couple of months ago. April was still singing its praises. And according to the JetBrains Python survey that recently came out, containers are still the most popular way for Pythonistas to deploy their code. So ACA has got you covered. Also, very important, I love the Python Software Foundation. I'm on the board for the Python Software Foundation, so I had to plug it. The elections start June 20th and end June 30th. If you are not a member of the Python Software Foundation, I recommend just joining as a basic member. That does not give you voting privileges. There are 4 more levels of membership privileges that do give you voting privileges. I recommend you check them out so you're active in your community, and then vote, vote, vote. Exercise your franchise. And there's a awesome video from one of my coworkers, Jay Miller, that is linked in the show notes, and they go through all sorts of things, PSF elections. And finally, last but not least, the Azure SDK for Python is continually growing with openly developing for GitHub, so you can check them out here. We're specifically focusing on updating our client libraries to take advantage of the latest improvements of Azure services and investing in Python developer experience with typing improvements and documentation enhancements and things like that. So that was it. I zoomed through all the announcements. I hope you got that. And if you didn't get it, they are in the show notes. I think we could get to the fun stuff now. Are we ready for some fun stuff, Sarah? Oh, you're quiet.
I wasn't ready. That was a test. I am ready now.
That is so honestly, it's very courteous to put me. I like forget all the time to mute your mic when someone else is talking. My dog is in the background all the time. So anyway, we're ready.
Uh, Sweet. So do you want to, I'm gonna do my,
Okay,
uh,
cool. And we can
oh,
prioritize your
funny,
screen because
my
we want
little
you to be bigger
pre
than me.
thing. So probably helpful since folks in the chat, if you've heard of dev containers or maybe you use dev containers, let us know and then I can kind of gauge how much time I should spend on this.
Yeah,
But at a very high level, probably folks are familiar with containerization in the form of Docker, right? So that's like,
one moment. I just want to prioritize your screen if that's
I
okay.
do this. And also, I am watching chat, so if stuff is not big enough, like font-wise, please let me know. um, I will try and respond accordingly. If you want me to just share my screen too, I can do that.
This should work. This should work. This should work. You are the important person. Okay, okay, okay. Uno momento. They just have like a big picture of my face, which is, lovely, but not necessary. Let's just
Okay,
put you
cool.
first, and I don't know. I'm just gonna be like an omnipresent voice in the background, just going, "Cool stuff, Sarah."
I'm going to try and, oops, move my
Ha,
stuff here.
Bradley,
No,
Docker barely know her. I love that. Just you're hilarious.
there we go. Can I move me? Can I move me? There we go. Sweet. So yeah, basically you may have heard of of Docker, which is one form of kind of containerization that basically allows you to not just specify like a Python environment, like kind of the grades of kind of isolation or specification are like you're just writing Python code on your machine, you're pip installing somewhere.
Mhm.
Then there's creating Python environments, whether that's with virtual M's or Conda or any other of kind of like the build or packaging tools like Hatch or Tox or Nox. And then kind of the next step is to say, all right, not only like what is in my Python kind of workspace, what is my machine?
Mhm.
So usually that's kind of where Docker containers and that sort of thing kind of comes in handy because you're specifying like a whole computer ish. But the kind of development containers are kind of like one more step removed. So yeah, this is just the website containers.dev, but it's an open source spec for a way of specifying not just where the code is running, but how you are interacting with your code. So things about like your editor or testing tool chains or, basically stuff that may not be captured in like literally kind of running install scripts on a machine. So, like I think the most helpful thing to me that I like using them for is I want to make a contribution to an open source project and
Right.
I don't want to kind of make my local machine messy.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I very regularly Docker on my machine. Just I've had to install a lot of extra hard drives. So yeah, like because I'm not very good about garbage collecting. Maybe I should be, but I am not. So because you never know if you might need that code again.
Right. I am absolutely a file hoarder. It is not great in that respect. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship with development containers and Docker itself? We have some
Mhm.
people mentioning that they are not necessarily experts in Docker.
Yeah, so that's kind of the other thing. I am also not an expert in Docker. Like, I feel like I can do maybe some of the basics, like running things, running code in Docker containers, but kind of manipulating them from the command line is non-trivial. So basically, when I'm doing local development, dev containers are effectively my interface to Docker because they start with a Docker container specification. So they start with how your code is going to run, and then you add on other things like how should my editor be configured. Once my Docker container is spun up, what do I want to run to like install testing frameworks or things that aren't necessarily like part of the code, but infrastructure I need around the code? Like, do I need GraphViz to build images? Do I need, LaTeX to build things? So, yeah, it basically allows you to specify a bunch of different things around how you want to work on that project.
Cool.
So yeah, like I don't basically ever run Docker from the command line anymore. I'm using VS Code and use the remote development extension in VS Code to actually start these development containers. And really all you need to specify them is a JSON file and possibly a Docker file, depending on kind of how complex your project is to set up.
Awesome.
But yeah, so like this happens to be an example of one we'll look at a whole bunch, but it's, yeah, usually not more than like 20, 30 lines. And this has a lot of comments, we'll say. So, yeah. So first of all, are there any questions or comments or ideas about these, about dev containers more broadly? Oh yeah, that's how I work with Git, just with the VS Code extension. Me too. Why use a Docker container instead of a virtual environment? That is a good question. One reason I use the Docker containers over a virtual environment is I have a Windows machine, not because I work at Microsoft, because I like playing Final Fantasy 14. No one here is making me do this, but just kind of also from my own experience working in scientific kind of applications and research areas, we had a lot of cases where we had to use Windows because we had other like lab instruments that only had software made for Windows. So it was kind of, we like really wanted to maybe use a Linux machine, but we couldn't. So I have seen kind of projects that I've worked on. If I look at like the breakdown of downloads by operating system, there is an awful lot of people who are using Windows to do scientific Python sorts of things. And there are kind of occasional gotchas that you can run into just because of what compilers and stuff are available, kind of typically from your operating system, that setting up like Conda is the most reliable way if you want to do like environments for scientific Python stuff on Windows, because it can help you manage a little bit more than just Python. It can also install system utilities and stuff. But I feel like at this point, the most reliable way, that I've found is to just do this, like create a Docker container, because then I don't have to worry about what's set up on either a Windows machine or a Mac. Like what did they use? Homebrew? Did they use? Right. So like it just removes a lot of variables. It's kind of like in the scientific principle, like you don't test like 8 hypotheses at once. You should really just go by one at a time. And so I feel like because these are, in addition to making contributions to open source projects, these are really helpful for like workshops or bug bashes or sprints, where every time I've done them, like kind of historically, you spend like probably half of the people can kind of get up and going right away. Another quarter of the people, it takes about half the time of the workshop to get, a development environment working. And then another quarter of people have just literally cursed machines that you cannot for the life of you figure out how to get, the tests or builds working because something is wrong on their path. So you can, like, dev containers make it easier to do stuff locally as well, because the only thing you need to do local stuff is Docker. So you do have to have Docker installed. But if you don't have that or don't want to help people set that sort of stuff up, there's also code spaces. So that's basically the GitHub feature slash product that will also look at exactly that same configuration and set up. You can do it all from your browser.
Yeah.
Or if you prefer, like me, and have a browser with a million tabs that crashes all the time, you can forward that code space to a local VS Code instance.
And that's a really great scientific and advocate kind of perspective and open source contributor perspective on why containers work. I come from a web dev background, and I had a coworker. I've always been using virtual environments and Docker on occasion when I'm doing open source, and he exclusively used Docker. And I was so confused, but I do understand how there's a level of reproducibility in there, and it also has you start up very quickly, and it is self-contained environments between projects. It was also really good because we were both in we're in a consultancy type role. It was more a hybrid. We worked full time, but at an institution. But we were making small projects over and over again, and so sometimes the requirements from one project to another would be different. And it was really much easier to be able to pin the requirements and like figure out what was going on and diagnose the issue. Exactly what you said, Sarah. Totally. And then in my tenure, there's been a number of virtual environment tools that I've reached for. I loved PipInv. I've switched from that. I'm trying my hand at poetry a little bit more. I think we also have a question about poetry as well. But yeah, so this way you could still use your virtual environment if you want. It'd be a little bit of a turducken inside of it, but it maybe gives you a little bit more clarity on what you're doing. So anyway, just a little web dev flavor on your great answer.
Yeah. And I would actually, and you can feel free to discuss or disagree with me in chat, but I would actually advocate for the turducken, because what that allows you to do is keep the same, so the question here was how to make a compatible dev container with poetry. Looks like a setup requires a lot of additional adjustments. And that's kind of the nice part. And we'll just get to I'll show you how you actually do it, but basically you should keep the same sort of setup that somebody would do to do locally. I find this is kind of A, the most reliable way to set them up, and B, then if somebody isn't, because that's the other thing to me is you don't want to necessarily change your project to only work around dev containers. I mean, that'd be cool. They are great, but in terms of accessibility, maybe someone doesn't use Docker, doesn't uses Vim locally or Emacs, so which there's actually a command line tool for dev containers separately, so you can still launch them and work with them even if you're not using VS Code. And because dev containers are an open spec, JetBrains is actually adding support for code spaces as well, or sorry, support for dev containers. So you'll have a similar sort of experience if you're, I know, I'm super excited about this.
I have some friends over there, and I love that we play nicely. That's so great.
Yeah, so and if you I find myself going to this page a lot, which is basically the page for the open spec. So you can see there's a bunch of good guides, and it'll also show you what tools support it. So because this kind of did come out of the Visual Studio Code team and folks at GitHub, those are kind of the tools that are most supported right now. But there's a bunch of so Jetpack, and there's a few other kind of back-end dev pod, things like that. It's kind of slowly starting to propagate. But yeah, there was one other thing in chat that I wanted to call out here too. Someone asked, how can I, if you're working on Windows, how can you run a Linux dev container? And the answer is because it's actually using WSL2. So that's the Windows subsystem for Linux. There's actually now shipped with Windows a full Linux kernel that you can actually just kind of log into and use on your Windows machine. And so that's actually what's running your Docker containers. And so like, yeah, actually I do almost all my dev now other than testing on, in Linux. And I test on Windows locally, but it just gives me good options that I can kind of go back and forth between. So yeah, you can develop on Linux on Windows. Sweet. Yeah, so we talked about there's lots of different places you can use these. Let's just actually look at one here. So I'm going to start with I have given a few talks about this, so this is kind of I'll put this link in chat if you want to take a look. This was from PyCascades this year. Putting this in both chats. There we go. Yeah, so kind of like a lot of other config files, or like your setup.py. I mean, I guess that's more of a script, but the pyproject.toml, it's basically another literal files for this just kind of look like this. Here I have a devcontainer.json. And here I say, this is the name of my dev container. For building, I have a Docker file. And once the kind of Docker image is finished being built, I just say conda init, because whenever you install conda, that's basically how you get the commands to work in the terminal. And then here you can see the parts that are kind of like, more uniquely the dev container is I can say, hey, if you're using VS Code, this is probably the Python interpreter that I'd like you to use, this conda environment. And here are some extensions that I think would be helpful and installed. I shared the link in chat. Two up.
Yeah, I think it might have been, I don't know if Twitch, it should. I'll share it again.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I can say things about extensions or settings for extensions, or basically anything you could configure about VS Code and your VS Code experience, even down to where windows are and stuff when it opens up. That's all fair game. So, this is really pretty simple. And like, because this, I work a lot with conda, as mentioned kind of before, because it works well for some of the projects that I'm working on. I just meant to click on the Docker file. The Docker file, like, it's not super scary or anything. Like, sometimes I know, like, we'll write a Docker file, but this one is really quite simple. Why do I have this environment very I was testing something. I will remove that. Anyway, so basically all this says is, hey, starting from this Docker image, which is one that has mini conda set up in it. Oh yeah, sorry if it is too small. I will bigify. My bad. How's this? No, that's probably too much. There we go.
Yeah. Bigger is better over here. Okay, that's great. This is perfect.
Also, foo's, yeah.
Foo likes foo.
Foo likes foo. My username everywhere is crazy for pie, so I like pie. So yeah, like I just basically have a few commands here, because when I'm working with conda, like Mamba basically is a add-on that makes the dependency resolving go faster. So just basically a few things. And then it says also, if you have an environment file, just install that stuff while you're making the dev container or building the Docker image itself. So honestly, really pretty simple. So I was going to highlight that our friends working on CPython, the actual Python language, also have a dev container now.
Nice.
It was something Brett was working on at PyCascades. But
I think I saw Brett in the chat. I don't know.
Yeah.
If he's still around. Hey, Brett.
I was asking him if there's anything else he wants in here, but yeah, you can see here, like even for the Python language, here it says Dockerfile on create. There's basically, it looks like configure maybe some things about shells. I'm just not starred. Have I not? Oh, I mean, it's starred now. I can't believe I had. Of course it was starred. It was starred all along, Brett, I promise. But yeah, like you can see here, when because there's basically a bunch of different stages as it goes through. And so like if you want something to happen after the Docker container is made, but before VS Code spins up, like basically there's some kind of fine grained control there. But here it also has, extensions and settings for like editor, tab size, stuff like that. But yeah, so like I wanted to do one for them, but then I realized that they already have a dev container and it looks great. So like if you wanted to use it, say there was, I'm going to pretend I want to make a contribution here. I mean, I do, but I'm not sure I can actually make it. Delete duplicate method names. Cool. So if I wanted to work on this, I could basically got in 4K. Oh no. Yeah, like metal is 571. There's a whole, if you look at the dev containers specification here, they have like every, okay, it's hard to show you like a full, like you can see all of the options. Cool. Someone asked, if I have some code that's working in one code space but not another, can I put it in a container to integrate the two? So I think you're kind of going along the similar lines here. So I would basically go to the main page here and I'll start working on I'm not going to start literally working on that issue, but I'm just going to make a code space. So I think most people have, you have a free allotment of credits for code spaces every month. You have more if you're a student, and if you're a GitHub Enterprise customer, you also have more. But you also can just kind of, I actually do this because I use it a lot. Like you can put your credit card in, and I test these like pretty heavily all month, and I don't think I spend more than about like $5, honestly. And that's me spinning up usually the largest machines, because you can also pick the size of the machine in the background, backing it up, including ones with GPUs. So that's nice.
I'm glad you tested so I don't have to, Sarah. That's very comforting.
Yep. I kept forgetting that the scroll wheel zoom doesn't work in web. Whoop. Can I make it bigger? That looks like it's probably good enough. Yeah. So, now I am literally working on the CPython like actual repo. And yeah, I could basically make all my changes. I'm going to do something. Foo equals var. I don't want to make this, but so I have some change and I can do this. Don't listen to me. Okay, well, permissions to this repo. Normally it offers for me to, like, you can generally fork directly from here. Yeah. And, oh yeah, so if you're also in a code space, there is, like, you can always click down here. Oh, it's underneath me. All right. The bottom right here. Bottom left. And it gives you, like, if you need to rebuild it, or if you want to stop or continue working locally, all of those are kind of or you can start a live share session. We'll get to that. But probably first, let's actually make one, since that's what I promised, and I don't want to run out of time for her. So I don't know. Spinning up an 8 gig one. Yeah, well, let me just show you what the options are here. I'm not proposing changes though, friend. I just wanted to spin up. Oh, I clicked configure. I don't know why I miss and click the next button down. So yeah, you can choose if you are living somewhere not in the US and you want kind of faster connections or whatever. And here I have up to 64 cores. I don't have access to GPU ones yet, but I think they do have an early access program for them.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, so let's actually. You want to do Django?
Yeah.
All right, let's do Django.
Sarah knows what to say to get me excited.
Now the thing is, I don't know Django. I know of it. So if we have build problems for the Django bits, I'm asking you.
Okay.
I doubt we will have any, but basically, so I've walked up to a repo, I've spun up a code space, and basically if I usually do this rather than on my local system just because it's usually just faster because it's just a click, faster in terms of executive function. So I don't forget and walk away. But really the first thing I need to know, I don't care about the iSort extension, sorry. First thing I actually need to know is how do you set up a development environment to develop Django? So honestly, the first thing I usually do is I go to the docs of the project. And
just a couple times.
Oh, yeah. And these docs are small. I wish you could set it so it just always zooms in at a certain level. Is there a developer guide?
Oh, I think
something like that. Yeah, this is honestly usually the part that takes the longest, which is to find where in the docs the development process.
I'm putting it in chat.
Okay, cool.
And
thank you. Boop. And of course it opens in the wrong browser, so wow. I thought I was so clever, full screening things, and I think it's really just made things bad.
I think it looks really cool. I think it's still worth it.
I want every ounce of screen space. So, all right, so we found a contributing guide. This is also why if you maintain a project, it is really helpful. There's a lot of times a contributing.md, right in the root of the project. That's always really helpful to have, or at least having good docs around. So I'm just going to look here and triaging tickets. Probably what we're looking here for is something like this. What I'm looking for is basically how do you set up the actual writing code. Sorry, this wasn't supposed to be a trick question.
Also, this one. I think you found that one as well. There is writing code. Oh, the link is also into the top right of your screen too. I just posted it. And voila.
Okay.
And
let's see. Okay, I think this is it. I was looking earlier and then I also forgot where I found it. Cool. All right, and it's just giving me a warning here that this is docs for the development version as well, but that's fine.
Perfect.
Cool. So yeah, reading through, great. You fork it. That's probably a good idea. Usually, if you're working at least in code spaces, it's because it'll usually know, hey, you can't push directly to and repos should be set up so like random external people can't push to them. It will kindly offer to fork. So I will just test that. So you get the code. You create an environment. Okay, cool. You activate the environment. This is cool. I mean, just as a docs review point, they have Windows instructions, which is helpful. And so this does an editable install of Django for testing. Install requirements and run tests. Okay, cool. So this is pretty straightforward. Let's go back to our code space. I'm actually going to do one of these and then rest. Oh, that's a fun bug. Oh, it doesn't let me use my shortcuts for putting windows and halves of things. You know, we're done full screening. I can't have nice things. Okay, cool. So we can see there isn't a dev container thing here. So let's actually just add that. I don't know why. So it's giving me a lot of notices about extensions and stuff because it's taking, when you create, if your project doesn't have a dev container and you go to spin up a code space, GitHub tries to make a good guess at what you might want for the project / uses just a like kitchen sink for everything. So I'm not going to worry about any of these because I'm going to add configuration files that override all of it. Anyway, so what I want to do here is if I click
do have a
on
question. Could we show off the default Python profile and then do the dev container, and how would that interaction overlap? Because it could solve some of the pop-ups. So it would be that one. Yep, and then create a new.
Create profile.
And then, yeah, that Python one.
Nice. So yeah, there is an interesting interaction between profiles and settings that you set in your dev container. Yeah. So basically it will try to combine them. If you have conflicts, your personal settings, like for your profile, are probably, if I recall correctly, override what the dev container says. So when I am developing dev containers, I usually set myself to like a default or empty profile, just so I can see and make sure things are installing the way I want. So yeah, I don't know why this isn't, now this is not minimizing. Windows, like the window, not the operating system. Okay, so this is pretty much how I usually do it. I'm going to just create a new configuration because I want to see things from scratch. So there are a whole bunch of kind of just like those profiles.
Yeah.
The profile templates, there's a bunch of dev container templates that kind of already exist. So this is a Python project and it looks like they were using VM. So probably like we can use an Anaconda one that might be helpful. But if I just type Python, you can see there's tons of different options here. Like you saw, I was using the Miniconda one before. If you use Postgres, if you use so I think I'm going to go with this one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially since we're not building a Django project, which I would pick Postgres with it. we're
Oh
in
yeah,
this
is there Postgres as a
no,
part of
no,
this?
no, no,
Okay.
no. With this hypothetical scenario, we're just contributing to Django core.
Okay,
But
cool.
if I wanted to develop my own web app with Django, I would pick the second option.
Yeah, I'll first I'll just go with the basic Python one
Yep,
here,
I think that's
just because
good.
I want to keep it as kind of minimal as possible. You can always add stuff on.
Totally.
So then it gives you the option of what version of Python you want to use. I'm gonna go with 3.11. I think Django supports 3.11.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Um, and then it's going to ask you about features. So features are kind of like I want to add something to my development environment, but I don't want to edit or make a Docker file. Like they kind of it's like Lego blocks you can add on. So a lot of them are things like command line tools, or different SDKs. Like here, I could add Anaconda at this point if I wanted to use like uh, late. Oh no, not LaTeX. Like the Azure CLI, if I wanted that to be there, if I wanted
I also saw
bicep support.
Tmux in there, so that's cool.
Yeah, if you want, I think fish. Yeah, if
Oh,
you want
yeah?
like shells, like whatever kind of you is helpful for your development sorts of things, like yeah, FFmpeg if you're
Oh,
doing
cool.
media stuff, like yeah, it's really nice to just like, especially when you're just setting stuff up. Often if you're doing like speed and performance tuning, you probably want to eventually make a Docker file. And
Mhm.
the nice thing is if you're contributing to a project, they may actually already have a Docker file, and then you can just point your dev container thing at the Docker file,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
which I did
yeah.
not actually check here yet, but we'll do that in a second. So I don't think there's any features here that I want yet.
Mhm.
Um, I'm also just going to search for. Oh my god. What do we got here? What's Docker box? Huh, we'll look at that for later, but for now, we'll just. I don't see like a Docker file literally in the repo, so
Mhm.
that's
Nice.
fine. But yeah, I will, now that it offered this to me already, but I will say rebuild container now. Yep, that's fine. Um, if you are working on a code space, like it will, like you spin it up. If you
Mhm.
don't touch it or don't interact with it for like, I think default it's 30 minutes, it shuts itself down. That doesn't mean all of your work, like it basically just puts it to sleep. So it's not actively running. You can
Okay.
view the logs here. The logs here are basically the Docker build
Okay.
logs.
Yep, yep, yep.
If for folks that like watching logs, a
That's
log connoisseur.
me. No one can see me, but I am raising my hand. I love to just like
No.
it's almost zen. You just sip your chai and watch the logs.
Mm-hmm.
Pat yourself on the back.
Yep. So yeah, basically, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm going to follow the instructions here. So and just kind of see what happens. First question is, I just want to check that and make sure. Okay, cool. We have on path a version of Python that I want, and to minimize problems.
Mhm.
You can copy and paste after you give it permission.
Mhm.
We'll have it do that. Great. I will then have it activate this. You should also remind me if I forget about it, check what extensions. And by remind me, I'm just going to go
Mhm.
to. So we've got these 3 extensions as a part of those recommendations. Again, here you
Yeah.
can probably see. Oh, sorry, no, those are coming from the profile.
Yes, yes,
The
correct.
Python profile. So another one I want to use is Python
Oh,
environments.
and I also, yeah.
This is like seriously one of my favorite extensions,
And
mainly
it's
just
made by one of
because.
our coworkers. So
Yep,
and generally, I tell people to use the Microsoft recommended ones first, and then look at the reviews and X, Y, and Z. But when you see Python environment or Python extensions that are by Don Gimani, that's our friend, and those are
they're
really
good.
good ones.
And it's really nice that you can just like from right here, you can just say, all right, add that to my dev container.
Nice.
I already installed it, so I'm not going to rebuild it now. Like that doesn't change it. But what's nice about that is if you ever want to check like what environments you have installed on your machine, like my list on my local machine, like goes, I have to scroll a long ways. Again, see above like environment and or code hoarder. You never know if you forgot something, maybe. But yeah, this is like a super, and you can like set as active. You can basically say, hey, I want this to be my default. You can like look at things real quick about it.
Hmm.
Super, super great pro tip. So cool. And you can see now in our terminal, and let me make it high. I need to
You should
move
just
me
do like
again.
air horns. Boom, 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 boom. Pro tip, pro tip, pro tip.
I should have my audio mixer up again. Okay, cool. Now you can probably see the terminal a little bit better. So yeah, we activated it. You can see that our thing is activated with the
Mhm.
text right there. Um, so the next part of the extension was this. So this is good. This means if I am doing sample things that Pippin's. I want to use the current version of Django that I'm editing as the one that I'm calling.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that makes sense. Uh, oh, lol, they got me. Path to your local clone of Django.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that's just where we currently are.
And it's yeah, yeah, yeah,
So great, we've built it.
and I'm looking over your shoulder, and I didn't get the great. How many devs did it take to get the right path?
Yeah, I didn't notice that was fill in
No, no, it's
the
good.
part of the Mad Lib, right? Um, so
Hmm.
I kind of feel like did it already install requirements? I don't know. Let's
It would
paste
do so
paste.
if the dev container was doing a fun extra thing for us. Oh, and it's
Oh,
is that
yeah.
correct?
We're gonna make sure the dev container does it, but it was more like when it built the wheel, did it do that? But I don't
Uh-huh.
think so.
Okay. Yep.
Don't know why I'm having trouble copying and pasting here. Okay, there we go. Boop. Again, I'm probably in the wrong place. So where are the requirements here? There a
¿Dónde está?
folder? ¿Dónde está los requirements? uh, Hi
Mm,
3. Oh, under tests. Tests. Okay, read the words on the page, Sarah. That is a slightly interesting place to put uh, your requirements files, but that's okay. That's why we read.
OAQRS, yeah. Okay.
There we go. I can do
Ah.
this. Okay, so also here's a nice hack. I'm going to copy
Mhm.
the relative path. So I can do this and I can just
Voila.
remember in my brain where we were going.
I'm like switching languages. I'm doing French, I'm doing Spanish. I know several words in each.
um, Sweet. So yeah, then Okay, cool. We're installed. And it says to
Yay!
run this run tests.py. So
Yep.
again, I'm kind of gonna just do that. And yeah, so like basically I want to walk all the way through, whatever the project's kind of specified, like development setup, run a test suite. Hopefully if this takes a long time, I will work on other things during. But yeah. So they kind of say take out, make tickets. We
Should
did
be
the
pretty
run.
fast, but the opinionated framework is very opinionated, so it means it is
This
likely
looks
very
like
well tested.
snakes.
Yeah.
This looks like a bunch of snakes snoring. um, okay, cool. And yeah, so I would like to also possibly check building the docks, but uh, maybe that is part of the tests. Okay, and then they show Git instructions. Cool. Yeah, what else do we need to do here? Well, okay, we actually have to take those steps now and actually put them in the dev container files. So, let's just again minimize everything, take a look. Boop. Cool. So yeah, this was this is all we needed to get where we're currently at.
Yeah.
I will also make sure we have. Let's make sure we have a few other of those extensions in case someone's not using profiles or things like that. So we'll make sure the Python one is there. I feel like Python pulls in Pylance, but
Can you add snippets to the dev container?
you totes can.
Ah!
I mean, you can have the snippets file, like there's like the .vs code settings thing,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you could
yeah.
have it in there. Or if it's short enough, I think you could just explicitly say it here. But literally so like here, this is VS Code, this is extensions. I can do settings and literally anything. If I go settings here,
Mm-hmm.
I should literally anything there. I'm sure there's an asterisk. um,
Mm-hmm.
so like if you set things like usually I will check to see if
Yeah.
there's when I'm done editing, is there things I have forgotten or subtly changed
Yeah.
that I want to make sure to port back. I'm not sure I want to enforce that for everybody. Maybe and here's where you can like
Yeah.
pick how opinionated you want things to be. Usually when I'm contributing a dev container for another project like that I'm not a maintainer on, I try to keep it pretty minimal.
Mm-hmm.
Or just following the instructions. Okay, so it looks like we had some failures. The question then is that our fault or are the tests not currently passing on main? I feel like they probably would. Extract file permissions. See, this is the part where I was like, so Dawn, do you know
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
build
Okay.
Django Core? It looks like a lot of these are file storage permission tests.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my guess is that that probably is something we need to address and just like make sure in the dev container, which is a Linux system itself,
Yeah.
we can chmod certain files if we need to make sure
Oh, this is so
things
exciting
have
though, because this is like a
permissions to
very
run.
reasonable, like kind of bug that we've come into that we can like
Mm-hmm.
totally fix. So I think I have, and we're, getting, we're hitting that hour. And we've had so much that we've covered today. I'm so excited. So I think we could like follow up with maybe what are the ways that we can keep in touch with us? We're in the Microsoft Discord together. We also blog. Sarah has a wonderful blog, and she's also been doing stuff. Do you typically go on dev.to or where do you usually blog?
Yep, I always have my stuff on Dev2, and I'm also on Discord a lot. So
Awesome.
that's probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. And
Yay.
yeah.
We're gonna have to do a part 2 of this. This was really fun, and I'm also mentoring some people to contribute to Django. I have not done a dev containers with it before, so on the fly, I am kind of useless right now, which is bugging me. I am not gonna let it stay that way. I'm going to update this and update Discord with it.
Yeah, like basically like the
Mhm,
last TLDR is
mhm.
the steps that we did like in the command line here. I'm basically like I may just make a little separate script file, or you could basically put them all in here with just little ands in between, and that's basically what I would do to set it up. I wouldn't run the tests as a part of building it, but I'd have create the environment and stuff like that.
Perfect,
Um,
right.
and probably add settings here for setting, kind of like you saw in the other dev container, setting what was the default. Like I want that virtual env to be the default interpreter. But yeah, that's about it.
Right. That's awesome. We're gonna have to go live again and chat about it. So that's you. Let's go here. Can we see?
Here, I'll
Yeah.
switch back to me.
Okay. This was lovely. This was great.
Yeah,
This was a really great stream, and we got to use my favorite project to do it. You were literally like knocking things off my to-do list and making it more approachable. So I appreciate that. And we'll team up on work time, and then maybe like
sounds good.
share our findings on a stream too. Okay.
Sweet.
Let me get my goodbye script up. Okay. Where is it? Where is it?
So long, farewell, all
So
features
we just
sing
say
goodnight.
goodbye. So long. Okay, that's enough. So thank you so much for joining us on the Python Pulse. You can find us here in the future on the second Friday of every month, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UTC. We also showed that Discord invite on the screen. You can find us on Discord. Follow us on socials. Both of us are on Mastodon. Do you want to give your Mastodon?
Yep, it is math. stadon.xyz/crazy for pi. I will put it in chat. Do not worry.
Awesome. And I'm Bajorn Engineer at Mastodon dot online. And Sarah, you'll get a kick out of this. I'm reading a new Star Trek book. I'm just chucking
I
through them.
I saw you talking about the Garrick one, and I did not realize that that was written by the actual actor. Are you kidding me? Why have I not read this already?
I just read the 34th Rule, which is written by Armin Shimmerin and another person, and who is the actual actor for Quark. Anyway, we're nerding out. We're going in the wrong direction. We're hitting that hour. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm so pleased to have Sarah here as always, and happy coding.
See you, folks.
Bye y'all.